Do you truly understand the quiet devastation hidden beneath the calm face that made Keanu Reeves one of the most cherished figures on Earth? Keanu Reeves, an icon carved from stillness, a legend who never begged for the spotlight, yet somehow became its most unlikely crown. He is not only Neo, the man who rewired reality inside the Matrix, and not only John Wick, the shadow who turned grief into something sharp and unstoppable. He is something rarer than roles. He is the pulse of cinema itself, an enduring presence that has offered his body, his breath, and his restraint to generations of people who needed someone to believe in. In a world swollen with ego and performance, Keanu stands apart like a soft light that refuses to burn out. They call him the kindest man in Hollywood, the most grounded soul among the famous, a human anomaly whose generosity reaches strangers in silence, and whose dignity gives even the harshest critics nothing to tear down. He has become living proof, that decency can still command attention in a judge addicted to spectacle. And yet, the story behind that decency is not something Keanu Reeves has ever fully unfolded for the world. There are wounds that never healed cleanly, losses that did not leave when the applause arrived. Buried stone. What you're about to step into may fracture the version of him you thought you understood, because the most devastating parts of his life were never performed for anyone. They were endured. Music, the first cracks in Keanu Reeves, were etched long before the cameras learned his name. They were carved into childhood, into the earliest places where love is supposed to feel safe. A father who vanished without explanation. A mother chasing stability through broken unions and constant relocation. Siblings scattered across a family. Map that never stayed still long enough to feel like home. And a boy who learned too soon that affection could disappear without warning. Born on September 2nd, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. Even his name sounded like poetry. Keanu, cool breeze over the mountains. But that gentle meaning had almost no time to bloom before it was swallowed by upheaval. His parents were already drifting apart when he entered the world. By the time he was 2, his father was gone, not with a final conversation, not with closure. Just absence. At 13, Keanu saw him one last time in Hawaii. No real answers, no repaired bond. Only a quiet moment that hardened into a lifelong emptiness. Years later, Reeves spoke about it with the kind of restraint that makes pain feel heavier, not lighter. And as the years stacked up, that silence became permanent. A missing piece that never returned. Comment or write ripped Keanu Reeves to honor them. Music, the weight of keeping the family upright, fell to his mother, Patricia, who carried her children. Through cities the way others carry boxes, Sydney, New York, Toronto, each place promising a reset, each place collapsing into the next before it could ever become a home. The marriages came and went like temporary walls. Stepfathers passed through their lives like visitors who never unpacked. Half-siblings arrived through different branches of loss. His younger sister, Kim, in a childhood built out of half-packed suitcases and unfamiliar ceilings. Kim became the one steady point, a reminder that family could be more than a forwarding address. Home wasn't a sanctuary for Keanu Reeves. It was a pause between disruptions. School didn't offer safety either. In 5 years, he moved through 4 high schools. Dyslexia turned classrooms into a daily trial where words slipped, lines blurred, and time seemed to race ahead without him. Teachers misread his curiosity as rebellion. One principal expelled him simply for asking too much, because Keanu didn't know how to pretend he understood things that made no sense. Behind the difficult student label was a boy reaching for something solid in a life that wouldn't stay still. That solidity finally appeared on the ice. As a goalie, he became the wall. It was the first time he could feel, if only for a short stretch, unbreakable. Comment. An injury arrived without mercy, tearing through his dream like a blade. One moment he was guarding the net. The next he was standing still, watching others skate. Toward the future he had pictured for himself. The rink didn't stop making noise. The blades still cut through ice. The game still went on. It just stopped including him. Reeves had already lived through what would splinter many adults. A father erased by silence, a childhood in constant motion. Schools that pushed him aside instead of holding him up. A dream removed before it could mature. It was an education in loss, and yet it did not harden him into bitterness. It refined him. Absence taught him empathy. Instability taught him restraint. Struggle taught him patience. And the injury that closed one life quietly opened another. Path one he could not yet see. When hockey disappeared, he didn't fall into darkness forever. In the silence after that loss, stories began to whisper. Performance became a shelter. Acting became a way forward. It demanded the same things his life already demanded: discipline, hunger, and the stamina to endure rejection without breaking. Scripts were slow battles because dyslexia never left him, but the camera didn't ask for perfection. It asked for truth. And Keanu began giving it. Comment or write Rip Kim Reeves to honor them. Music. He took whatever work kept him standing small Canadian roles. Long hours for little reward. A Coca-Cola commercial swallowed with urgency. Hosting a children's program with an awkward sincerity that reached young viewers before the adult world ever truly embraced him. These weren't glamorous beginnings. They were survival. And survival, by that point, was a craft Keanu Reeves had been practicing his entire life, with little more than a worn car, a suitcase, and a name people stumbled over. He drove toward Los Angeles, carrying hope that felt fragile enough to snap. He lived in bare apartments where silence echoed back at him. He showed up for auditions that ended in closed doors more often than open ones. Casting agents stared at him with hesitation. Too quiet, too unreadable, too hard to categorize. Hollywood loves certainty. Keanu offered something else: depth that didn't announce itself. Then came the flickers of recognition. Roles that revealed a darkness the industry hadn't expected, a gravity that felt lived in instead of performed. And inside that fragile opening, Keanu met someone who felt like belonging without explanation. River Phoenix. River was restless brilliance, a flame that burned loud. Keanu was steady stone, quiet and enduring. Together, they felt like balance, like shelter, like brotherhood. For a brief moment, the world didn't feel as hostile. But even that sanctuary carried a shadow waiting its turn, then a different role. Reshaped how the world saw him, Bill and Ted's excellent adventure. The applause thundered, but the image became a cage. Hollywood decided what he was allowed to be, and complexity was gently removed from the equation. Success came, but it came with edges. Every cheer narrowed the road ahead, not chasing fame building endurance. The same quiet resilience forged through fractured. Homes and sudden losses now carried him through an industry that tests patience as relentlessly as it tests talent. Comment or write Rip Phoenix to honor them. Music. The 1990s arrived, and Keanu Reeves stepped into them not as Hollywood's chosen heir, but as its calm outsider, tall, watchful, carrying more scars than connections. In Point Break, he wasn't simply an action figure. He carried sincerity straight into danger. A strange paradox lived inside him, strength tempered by softness, force braided with thought. Then the world erupted. Speed arrived, the stakes exploded, and Sandra Bullock stood beside him as the world watched him rise into a new orbit. Offers multiplied, pressure tightened. And when the sequel money came calling, Keanu quietly did something Hollywood rarely forgives. He said no. No spectacle, no sermon, just no. Career suicide. Keanu absorbed it the way he'd absorbed everything else, without explaining himself to anyone. who never bothered to understand him. There were stumbles. There were whispers that maybe he had been mistaken for depth. But then projects came that cut through the noise and reminded people there was something real inside him, something tender, behind the stillness. Through it all, he kept climbing, carrying insults like weights under his feet. And then, in 1999, the storm arrived in full. The Matrix demanded surrender. Not only talent, but transformation. Training tore into muscle and bone. Wires twisted. His frame until joints begged for mercy, forcing him to work through pain that never became visible to the audience. On screen, Neo bent reality. Off screen, Keanu bent himself just to endure. And still, when the lights dimmed out, returned in familiar voices, wooden, limited, lucky, the same language that once chased him through. Classrooms now chased him through headlines. He climbed anyway, then years later, when many believed. His era had passed. 2014 hit like lightning. John Wick, minimal, brutal, mythic. Keanu trained with punishing devotion, hours on ranges, endless choreography, precision carved into bruises. His body protested, time pushed back. He refused to yield. On screen, Wick moved through grief like a weapon. Off screen, Keanu carried the quiet consequences of total commitment. Through it all, Sandra Bullock remained something different: steady friendship, unforced loyalty, a bond that survived because it never demanded a performance, comment, or right. R.I.P. Sandra Bullock to honor them. Long before love became gossip for the world, Keanu's heart lived quietly, cautiously. In the late 1980s, his first true love arrived when he met Jill Skolin. For nearly 3 years, they held on to the raw hope of youth, the belief that love might finally become somewhere you can stand still. But life pulled them into different orbits, and the distance widened until it couldn't be crossed. When it ended, it didn't explode. It simply disappeared, leaving a bruise that never fully faded. After Jill, rumors floated through tabloids like loose paper and when Sofia Coppola, Diane Keaton, Claire Fanny, Charlize Theron, Cameron Diaz. Some whispers were real, some manufactured, but Keanu never fed the noise. Silence was his protection. Fame had taught him that visibility can shatter fragile things. Winona Ryder held her own quiet place in his life, a bond born in shared work, carried forward with trust that never needed headlines to survive. Some connections endure precisely because they are never forced into spectacle. Keanu loved deeply, but carefully shaped by the knowledge that the world can damage what it touches too loudly. Then in 1998, love returned not as fantasy, but as something unmistakably real. Jennifer Sim. Their connection did not announce itself. It settled gently, like life finally pausing to offer him what he had always been denied: family. Jennifer became pregnant, and Keanu treated happiness like something fragile you protect with both hands. A nursery became a silent room of promise with nowhere to go. Tiny clothes folded with no future to hold. A crib waiting without meaning. Keanu did not rage. He did not explain. He became still in a way that felt louder than any scream. And in April 2001, the next blow came. Jennifer Sim was gone, taken suddenly, leaving Keanu standing on the border between before and after, with no bridge. Back. Cameras tried to turn his grief into an image, but what they caught was a man carrying weight no lens could translate. He returned to work, but nothing inside him was untouched. On screen, he survived impossible odds. Off screen, he carried the truth that the moment that mattered most had left him powerless. Loss did not end there. His sister Kim Reeves was diagnosed with leukemia. His life split into two worlds: the bright machinery of film and the sterile quiet of hospital rooms. He sat beside her in exhaustion. He reshaped schedules. He traveled without warning. He refused to leave. When Kim reached remission, it looked like victory to the world, but to Keanu, it was survival carved with scars that never faded. And somehow, without making a show of it, he turned that pain into quiet giving support in children's hospitals and cancer research without attaching his name. Not for applause, not for image, for gratitude, for love, for the vow that others should feel less alone. Now, having crossed his 61st year, Keanu Reeves lives more quietly, choosing calm over display. He shares his life with Alexandra Grant, a bond that grew from art and friendship into something steady enough to be seen. Peace for him is not perfect happiness, it is space. It is breath. Life has given him every reason to become hardened, and that may be the most devastating truth of all. Keanu Reeves did not become beloved because he escaped suffering. He became beloved because he survived it without turning cold. Comment or write RIP Keanu Reeves to honor them. Comment or write RIP Jill Scullin to honor them. Comment or write RIP Sofia Coppola to honor them. Comment or write RIP Diane Keaton to honor them. Comment or write RIP Charlize Theron to honor them. Comment or write RIP Cameron Diaz to honor them. Comment or write RIP Winona Ryder to honor them. Comment or write RIP Jennifer Sim to honor them. Comment or write RIP Ava to honor them. Comment or write RIP Alexandra Grant to honor them. Comment or write RIP Zell Jacobs to honor them. Asterisk after. Jennifer Syme was gone. The world expected Keanu Reeves to do what celebrities always do: disappear for a while, return with a forced smile, give a polished interview, wrap grief into something digestible. But Keanu didn't do any of that. Instead, he did something far stranger. In Hollywood. He stayed quiet. No press tour of pain. No dramatic reinvention. No desperate attempt to prove he was okay. He just kept going. And that's when people started noticing something unsettling, because Keanu Reeves didn't look like a man who had moved on. He looked like a man who had learned how to carry a weight so heavy it became part of the way he walked. Lonely photos the world couldn't forget it began with images. Not movie stills, not red carpets. Not premieres. Photos of Keanu alone, sitting on a bench, eating quietly, staring at nothing, holding a sandwich like it was the only thing in the world. That made sense. The internet tried to turn it into a meme. Sad Keanu. But that nickname was too small, too playful, because what those photos really showed wasn't sadness. It was aftermath. The silent landscape that appears when a person loses something they never thought they'd be able to lose and survive. People didn't know his full story yet, but they felt it anyway, because grief has a signature, and Keanu wore his like a second skin. He didn't just lose love, he lost the future. Most people misunderstand what broke him. They think it was Jennifer's death alone, but what truly destroyed Keanu Reeves was the timeline, the future he was building, a baby, a home, a life that wasn't about fame or roles or public perception. For someone who grew up constantly uprooted, that stability wasn't just exciting. It was holy. And then in less than 2 years, his daughter was gone, his partner was gone, and the future he had finally dared to believe in collapsed into nothing. He didn't just lose people, he lost the version of life where he got to stop surviving. How he responded was quiet and terrifying. There are 2 ways grief changes a person. Some become louder. Angrier. Sharper. But Keanu became quieter, not detached, not numb. Just careful. As if every laugh had to pass through a filter now. As if happiness was something that could be taken away the moment you relaxed your grip. And those who worked with him during those years said the same thing. He was kind. Professional. Focused. But behind the calm, there was an emptiness. Like someone living in a world that had already ended, and no one else noticed. River Phoenix. the loss that came before the love long before Jennifer. Keanu had already learned the brutal language of tragedy because River Phoenix's death wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the loss of someone who felt like a brother. River was light. Wellness. Hope with a pulse. Keanu was the quiet balance beside him. And then one night in 1993, River collapsed outside the Viper Room. He was only 23. The world mourned a star, but Keanu mourned something else. The person who reminded him life could still be beautiful without trying, and once you lose someone like that, part of you stops believing the world is safe. Keanu didn't say much publicly. He never needed to, because the silence was the statement. The pain started showing up in his roles. Here's what people don't realize. Keanu Reeves has never acted grief. He has translated it. Because when you watch him in certain scenes, you can feel something in his eyes that isn't scripted. A deadness, a distance, a resignation. Not the kind that makes you weak, the kind that makes you dangerous. That's why John Wick didn't feel like a character. It felt like a man whose soul had already been burned down, and all that was left was loyalty and consequence. When John Wick loses his wife, and later the dog she left him, it doesn't play like fiction. It plays like a person reliving the moment. Life becomes permanently divided into before and after, and when audiences watched him go silent and then explode, they weren't just watching choreography, they were watching the anatomy of grief turned into motion. His sister Kim, the battle that forced him to stay while most of Hollywood chased parties and premieres. Keanu was living in hospitals. Because while he was losing his future, his sister Kim was fighting for her life. Leukemia. A disease that doesn't care who you are, doesn't care what movies you've made, doesn't care how many people love you. Keanu didn't treat it like a family hardship story for magazines. He treated it like war. He rearranged schedules. He spent money without hesitation. He stayed beside her, and he did it without a single press release. Most celebrities want their generosity to be seen. Keanu has always wanted it to be felt. The Hollywood myth that he broke Hollywood runs on ego, on me, on headlines, control, dominance, image. But Keanu Reeves became an icon for the opposite reason. He didn't chase attention. Attention chased him. Because people could sense the difference, the way he talks too. Most people think they know Keanu Reeves. They know the memes. The action movies, the humble smile, the kindest man in Hollywood legend. But that story, the one the internet repeats like comfort food, is the soft version. Because the truth is, Keanu Reeves didn't become gentle because life treated him gently. He became gentle because life didn't. And somehow, he refused to become cruel. That's what makes him terrifyingly rare. Music. Some people survive pain. Keanu became it. There's a point where tragedy stops being an event and becomes a language inside you. And Keanu speaks that language fluently. Not because he wants to, but because he had to learn it to stay alive. His father disappeared. His childhood fractured. His education broke down. His dream died young. His closest friend died. His child was stillborn. His partner died suddenly. His sister almost died. That's not misfortune. That's a lifetime of being repeatedly taught that love can vanish. So people ask, why is he so humble? But maybe the real question is, how could he still be soft after the world kept punching him? Music, the part that always gets ignored. He was alone for years after Jennifer's time. Keanu didn't just lose a partner. He lost his last chance at building a normal life. And for years after that, he was alone. Not celebrity single, not taking a break, but the kind of alone where your world gets quieter every month. The kind of alone where Your phone stops ringing, your weekends have no meaning, and you learn to live with silence like it's furniture. The world watched him work. But behind the scenes, he was living like someone who didn't trust happiness anymore. Music. The sad Keanu meme was a cry for help. Nobody understood the internet made those photos a joke, a sandwich, a bench, a distant stare. But if you've ever lost someone, you know exactly what that stare is. It's not depression. It's not boredom. It's the face of someone replaying memories they can't return to. The internet laughed, but subconsciously, people didn't really laugh. They recognized the look. That's why the meme became famous, because it wasn't funny. It was honest. Music, he didn't become famous. He became a refuge. Keanu Reeves isn't just liked. He became something bigger, a symbol, a reminder. In a world where men are encouraged to be hard, loud, invincible, Keanu became proof that a man can be quiet, wounded, respectful, awkward, kind, and still powerful. That's why he's not just a celebrity, he's a refuge. People don't admire him the way they admire stars. They admire him the way they admire survivors. Music. Industry tried to break him too, and here's something brutal. Even after everything life did to him, Hollywood tried to do its own damage. People mocked him, called him talents. Wooden. A fluke. Keanu's response wasn't anger. It was persistence. Because when you've already buried your future once, criticism stops feeling fatal. So he kept working. He kept improving. He kept showing up. Not to prove them wrong, but because he knew how to outlast pain. Music, the John Wick truth that hurts. John Wick didn't explode in popularity because it was cool. It exploded because it felt real. A man loses the love of his life. He tries to live quietly. Then even the last small piece of her is taken away, and the grief turns into violence. People saw it as action. But if you look deeper, John Wick isn't a revenge story. It's a grief story. The kind of grief where you don't cry anymore. You go silent, and silence becomes dangerous. Keanu didn't need to pretend that pain. He already understood it. Music, why he gives so much away and never talks about it. Keanu Reeves has donated millions. Given away parts of his salary, helped crews, paid for medical bills, supported research, helped quietly behind curtains. But what's eerie is he never uses it as identity. He never says, "Look how good I am." Because for Keanu, generosity isn't a performance. It's a coping mechanism. It's his way of saying, I know what it feels like to lose. I won't let you lose alone if I can help it. Music, the love he has now, is different. When Alexandra Grant entered his life, it wasn't fireworks. It wasn't paparazzi romance. It was something more mature. A bond built from friendship, art, and time. People expected Keanu to finally get his happy ending. But the truth is, Keanu doesn't live in happy endings. He lives in peaceful chapters, and that's what makes it meaningful. Not perfection, but peace. Asterisk. Most people think Keanu Reeves is sad in a poetic way, like it's just part of his mystery, part of the aesthetic, part of why he feels deep. But that's the version people like, because the real version is harder to sit with. Because Keanu Reeves isn't sad like a song. He's sad like someone who learned early that life doesn't ask permission before it takes everything. Music, there's a kind of pain that doesn't heal. Not all grief fades. Some grief just becomes quieter. It settles into the body like cold metal. And it stays there. Because some people don't recover from losing loved ones. They simply learn to function while missing them. Keanu lost Jennifer, but he didn't just lose her. He lost the only life he was trying to build that wasn't about surviving. Baby. A future, a home, and when those vanished, it didn't just hurt him. It rewired him. After that, He didn't move through life the same way anymore. He moved like someone walking across glass, slowly, carefully, because he knew the moment you trust the ground, it shatters. Music, the cruelest part of Jennifer Syme's death. Jennifer didn't die peacefully. She died violently, and that detail matters because it leaves behind a different type of trauma, the kind that doesn't just break your heart. It haunts your imagination because when someone you love dies suddenly, your mind becomes a torture chamber. You replay it. You imagine the final moments. You think of what you could have changed. You start living in what if. And what if his poison. Keanu had no goodbye. No closure. Just emptiness. And when that happens, love doesn't feel safe anymore. It feels like a trap. He kept working like nothing happened. This is the part people don't understand. Keanu Reeves didn't stop. He didn't collapse publicly. He didn't spiral in front of cameras. He just went back to set, went back to action scenes, went back to interviews, went back to being Keanu Reeves. And that sounds noble. Until you realize what it really means. It means there were days he probably woke up and didn't want to be alive, but still got up anyway because he didn't know any other way to exist. He'd been practicing endurance since childhood. Music, the quiet self-destruction nobody saw. Some people self-destruct loudly. Addiction, scandals, breakdowns, fights, chaos. But Keanu's self-destruction was quieter. It looked like disappearing, isolating, disappearing into work, letting time pass without building anything. Slow erosion. A life where you stop expecting joy. Not because you're weak, but because you've been punished too many times for believing in it. Music. Even his kindness has a shadow. People call him the nicest man alive, but here's the dark truth. Sometimes the kindest people aren't kind because they're naturally joyful. They're kind because they know what it feels like to be destroyed, and they don't want anyone else to feel it. Kindness isn't always light. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's pain turned outward into mercy. Keanu doesn't smile like someone who is carefree. He smiles like someone who knows the world can end in a second. And he doesn't want to waste his few peaceful moments being cruel. He built a life with no roots. Most people build lives like trees. Family traditions, holidays, gatherings, home. But Keanu's life wasn't built like that. It was built like a traveler. A life that never fully settles, because if you don't build roots, you don't have to feel them tear out again, and that's a quiet defense mechanism. A scar disguised as simplicity. Music, why he looked dead behind the eyes. Sometimes there are photos of Keanu Reeves in the early 2000s where his face looks calm, but his eyes look far away. That's not acting, that's trauma. That's someone living with a permanent internal funeral. And what makes it unbearable is that he still showed up polite, still thanked people, still held doors, still gave strangers warmth. He carried devastation and still behaved like the world deserved softness. Music, the most heartbreaking reality, the saddest part of Keanu Reeves' story isn't that he suffered. It's that he suffered and didn't become hard enough to protect himself from more suffering. He stayed open. And open people bleed longer, but he chose it anyway. And that choice, staying gentle in a world that taught him harshness, is why he's not just admired. He's felt. He's a symbol for every person who has ever thought, life has taken too much from me, but I don't want to become a monster because of it.